Hi, I'm Lucy Davis.
And I'm Hasan Tahir.
And this is Room for Improvement, the podcast dedicated to service improvement in axial SPA care. So welcome to the next episode of our podcast. Really delighted to have a fantastic speaker with us today who will just blow you away with how enthusiastic and ambitious and actually the work that they do up in that site. And I'll leave that to Hasan to introduce our fabulous guest. Today, what we're really going to focus in on is how you can make change happen. So when you start with an incredibly ambitious and enthusiastic service and you have lofty aspirations around that, how do you use quality improvement to break those really big projects into bite-sized chunks so that you can pick them off quickly and easily? So without further ado, I'm going to ask Hasan to introduce our lovely guest for the day.
Thank you so much, Lucy. So I'd like to welcome Helena. Helena Marzo-Ortega. Most of us know her. She's very well known in the axial SPA arena. She's a consultant rheumatologist and associate professor from the Chapel Allerton Hospital, Leeds Teaching Hospital NHS Trust. And basically, we're going to talk about, Helena, your service and your aspirations, what you actually have done, and the changes you have done in your service. What I would like to do before we start is, can you just give us a bit of a background, Helena, about the service you've been running at your trust?
Well, thanks, Lucy and Hasan and Nas. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So, yes, thank you for asking us about our service. We are putting a lot of effort on trying to improve the quality of the care with the liver for patients with any type of spondyloarthritis, not only axSpA. So the current service has been running in the current format for nearly 20 years now, and it's sort of put together as a result of several research clinics we had at the time, like the inflammatory back pain clinic, a small psoriatic arthritis clinic, and we came up with the idea of having a weekly service. We're particularly proud of the fact that we work together with other specialties. So we deliver care together with our dermatology colleagues, which is a real plus for our patients with psoriatic arthritis. And we also count a gastroenterologist in our service with whom we work on every 2 months basis, running combined clinics. But if we think about our axSpA patients, we see them every week. We have clinics run by doctors, clinics run by nurses. We do have the possibility of imaging on site, and we count with the invaluable help of a youth worker who help us out with our young patients and our transition patients. And also, as of recently, I'm very proud to announce we also have a clinical psychologist. And within the multidisciplinary team, we have podiatrists, physiotherapists, and occupational therapists, which, although not completely dedicated to the axSpA service per se, they are around us and they provide that care when needed. So it has taken a while to get here, but I think we now are in quite a good place.
No, fair enough. So you do a clinic a week, and you clearly got lots of people on board. And as we know you very well. You've clearly got you're very interested in this area. So what was your concerns about your service? I mean, what did you really want to improve?
Yeah, so like everything, change doesn't happen in a short period of time. So once we built up the service, we've always been very keen on engaging with patients and asking them what works and what doesn't. And we started with patient survey soon after I took up as a consultant, nearly 15, 16 years ago. And in that survey, we started to inquire what they thought it worked. Yeah. We have sort of updated the survey over time. And overall, the theme is people really feel that we care a lot and they are very happy with the quality of the service they receive. But in general, the main problems were with access to the service, particularly in terms of flare. So flare care is one of our weakest points, as it was, clinical psychology input up to that time. So flare care is not something that depends only on us. I mean, we do have the service established across the rheumatology department, and we rely heavily on the provision from our rheumatology nurse specialist. And the problem, of course, is volume and numbers. So in a way, you're a victim of your own success when you start running a service that runs well. Suddenly it's not a secondary service, it's a huge tertiary service. We obviously deal with chronic disease. So once we get somebody in, it is a friend forever. Patients are with us for 20, 30 years. We see them growing through their adult lives. We see them going through all the milestones, getting to university, starting jobs, forming families, and that's the problem. We have too many patients, not enough doctors. Now, the service has actually grown a lot. So from one consultant, it now has 5. And we also do have nurse specialists working with us. But again, our problem was volume. For volume, we obviously, to be able to deliver the right care for the right patient anytime they need it, we need it to be more articulate as what we do. So it's not about continuing to doing what we've always done, because that doesn't work. We need it to change. We need to look about different options. And in particular, for us, the important thing was to be able to understand our cohorts. And by cohorts, I mean who needs to be seen quicker, who is in active disease, who has a flare, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so you highlighted the flare service as one of the problems, but I just want to go back one step, just mainly for our listeners, and just looking at the practicalities of, how did you go about doing a patient survey? So for anyone who wants to look at, where their issues are with their service, what was the easiest way to do that?
Okay, so usually in a normal visit day, there's nothing easy. You just have to think about it and do it. So first of all, with the surveys have evolved over the years. There is some sort of templates that you can get from the Royal College of Physicians. So if you don't know where to start, you can start there. But usually simple questions. Okay, what do we do well, what we don't? What is the main problem? What do you like about the service? What would you like to see change? And if you just start with 4 questions, that usually will give you some guidance. So then once we started to look at the answers, we realized what the weakest problems were. And then we went back to them, on the different services to say, how about we try this, we try that. I think it's always about engaging the right stakeholders. So once you have one answer, which is, we don't like to wait to be seen when we've got a problem, then you have to concentrate on flare access, okay? And then you do what you can, because that's how we work on the NHS. We cannot just say blue sky thinking, I would love to have a helpline which is manned 24 hours a day. Right, it doesn't work. So then what you do is you go back and you get all the people together who can help, junior doctors, nurses, consultants. How are we going to do this? And that's how you start, but biting on the elephant one bit at a time.
Hopefully it won't be that tasty. So you talk about a flare service. What other issues did you highlight in your survey that you felt that it needed addressing?
Okay, so flare care was definitely the worst one. And when we started looking into it on a bit more detail, we realized that it was again down to numbers. So because the service sees so many patients, at the moment we have nearly 3,000 patients coming through between axSpA and psoriatic arthritis. One of the things we realized very early on is we could not comply with NICE guidance. For us, the 6-month follow-up was not a possibility. And, we just wanted to make sure that people were responding at 3 months, and then we could see them at 12 months. So this is how you start, sort of moving the goalpost slightly. So for the flare care, we realized that the first problem we had was answering people who were already contacting the helpline. There was already a helpline in place. How we can improve the helpline service was the first thing. But second, how can we identify these people who are at risk of flare and would eventually have to call the helpline before they actually get to that point of crisis? So we had the crisis, the immediate decision taking, which was how we were going to improve the helpline. And the second one was how can we avoid people getting to the helpline? So the first point about the helpline was something that it was department-wide. So we decided that was not only an axSpA problem, it was for all the patients. So we've got a wider, sort of team looking at that. From our point of view was how to organize our cohorts and our referrals in order to be articulate and responsive and not keep people on long-term waiting list. So one of the things that we initiated years ago was the annual review. list, for instance, yeah? So once you start developing a long waiting list in the annual review list, that defeats purpose because people are not usually in remission forever. Yeah, so we realized that the annual review list was starting to grow and grow, and a lot of patients from that list were starting to fit on the helpline. So obviously that didn't work. We needed to put the stops in place to know who was on the annual review list, how they were doing, and whether they could wait for as long as we thought we did.
And how did you do that?
So this is where we came to aspiring to excellence. And we thought we were going to have a little, a little God fairy telling us what to do. But what we did was we had a think and we thought we definitely needed to improve patient flow. And to do that, we needed to improve our electronic record capture system. And the other thing that we thought would help us would be to sort of deviate some of the referrals. So, for instance, we do have quite a significant amount of tertiary referrals. And we audited that and we realized that the tertiary referrals didn't always need, in fact, nearly never needed to come to see us. What they would benefit from was just from a discussion. Because remember that tertiary means that they've already been through secondary care. And secondary care means that the majority of the time they've been already assessed by a specialist. So when a tertiary referral needs to be action is because just needs to have that little extra level of expertise or perhaps an outside vision. Yeah, somebody is looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes. So what we did was we created this Mdt Referral System, and that got rid of. I think I'm pleased to say all our tertiary referrals now go through the Mdt, so they don't get put on a waiting list. The traditional way would have been getting a letter and saying, give an appointment. And people would travel 300, 500 miles for one appointment. And on that day, the podiatrist may be on holiday. Yes.
So tell me, Helena, so that's a really interesting thing about this MDT that you've changed. And I do want to talk to you a lot more about this. So let's go back to the original, the standard process of which, let's say I want to ask you for an opinion. How long would that process take for a patient, for me to refer a patient to you, and then you eventually see the patient and give an opinion? Did you get a feel for that?
So traditionally that was months. I mean, that would have been anything from 3 months in the best scenario to 6 or 7 in the worst scenario.
Fine. And I'm assuming these are patients who are really struggling and they needed some advice about what new treatments or what other options are available. So these are patients who are struggling for 6 months, even longer or so. Okay, that's really, really interesting. Do you want to, Lucy, you were going to...
Yeah, I think so. I remember when we first met Helena in London, we had a conversation about every system being perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. And it was that kind of real light bulb moment. I think we had that interaction around that classic Edward Deming quote that we base a lot of our course on in the Aspiring to Excellence programme. And it was that moment I felt we had that interaction around actually the way we've done it isn't right to this day. And that, of course, we're getting the results we're getting because we could do it differently. And that felt like a real sort of change in the way you suddenly just went. And I know we've spoken about this before, but it was quite a quick process actually when you got clear in your head about those hypotheses of things you wanted to change and then implementing it. So if you could take us through a little bit more about how did you go from that sort of 6 month wait time to where we are now, where we have all tertiary patients going through there?
So I call this our COVID moment. Yeah, and I always say that COVID has given us so much good, not only has been bad. And, you always say that working in the NHS is like being a hamster inside this cage and going run. And you have to forever trying to get, your tail and you just struggle as a result. And suddenly COVID made us pause. Suddenly all the clinics were cancelled. Yeah, on the 23rd of March, when we were told we were going to go into this lockdown concept, all the consultants in Leeds got together and within 2 minutes we had a WhatsApp group. We had decided to organize a video to inform our patients. I mean, things started to move at a speed I've never experienced in my life. And I usually like a speed in things, particularly when needed. And what happened was we said, okay, we have to organize our referrals. Let's have a look at all our cohorts. And we spent the first week of lockdown validating our waiting lists. So for the AXPA and the PSA service, this meant the 5 of us going through 3,000 patients and validating electronically this. So remember, or perhaps you don't know, and you cannot remember, but just to let you know that Leeds was on paper up till the end of March 2020. So the rheumatology service was still working off paper. So what we did was, we said we need to organize all these people. We need to know who we think can wait and cannot wait. And we need to organize the telephone clinics. As we did that, we thought, let's prioritize outside referrals because these are not going to happen. Okay. So what we did was we got together. Funnily enough, I'm just laughing because the SPA team has got a get-together meeting. That's how we call it, the GTM. That happens once or twice a month. And on the GTM, we asked for a volunteer from one of our one of the registrars. And we said, we need to create an electronic MDT. So basically, we get everybody together. We discuss the referral with the person who is sending the patient in. We don't need to have the patient presence, so let's do like a virtual discussion. So what we did was the registrar organized for a referral pro forma and created a combined email address, okay? So then we went on to thinking, right, so we have an email address, people can write to us with this pro forma, they give us information that we ask on the pro forma, and then we set up a meeting. How do we advertise the service? So we thought, let's go for the website. Interestingly enough, we did not have a presence on the website before we created this. So we had to join up with the IT team. I do understand a little bit about back office. So basically, I just created this space on the website over a week and everything within 1 week, 10 days period at the end of March 2020, believe it or not. So now we are the proud owners of a dedicated AXPA site on the rheumatology space of the Leeds Teaching Trust website. And through that, any of our colleagues can access the MDT referral pathway. They can click on the referral form, download it, fill it in, and email it to us on the combined email address. And then we organize a virtual meeting, which will happen ideally within the same week of your referral, 2 weeks most, and we get anybody that needs to be on that consultation. So if the patient will require gastro input or dermatology input or radiology, for instance, is easy now. We don't ask people to pass any or transfer any images to us, because you may be calling us from somewhere south in the UK and your PAC system does not talk to our PAC system. If we are via Teams, people can share their screen so we can look at your imaging there and then.
So Helena, can I ask a question? Sorry, just while you're talking about it. So when they refer in, how do you choose? So you they're not dedicated people. You will go out and say, oh, okay, this person has some GI issues, so we'll get a gastroenterology on board, or it has some eye issues, we'll get an ophthalmologist. Or do you actually have a dedicated MDT all the time that will come on to this meeting?
So have in mind that they will not be sending them to us, to the rheumatology service, because of a particular problem within a particular extramusculoskeletal characteristic. For instance, the problem is, how do I manage, where do I go from here? So we look at the referral and we say, okay, this may benefit from this or that. The majority of the times we can sort it out ourselves. So it's just about the members of the rheumatology, of the AXPA MDT meeting with the person that is referring the patient to us.
And so who's your minimal cohort? So just for our listeners, if they were to set this up, who would you say the minimum group should be on this in this group?
So at the moment, we usually have 4 or 5 doctors on the meeting, plus the person who is referring. Yeah. Right. And we've been doing this now for 2 and a bit years. God almighty, 2 years. And I don't think it was only one occasion in which we needed to defer, in which a decision was taken that required further input, and it was we needed to get a bone biopsy and all sorts, and then we had to involve radiology, and that went on for another 2 visits. That's the only case I can think of. Every single tertiary referral has been resolved on that particular meeting. Because remember, the people referring are specialists themselves. They're just asking, what would you do now?
Sure. And when you do get, I'm just going through it in my head as it gets referred, a discussion is had, and then I assume it will be a letter is generated.
Yes.
And that will then go to...
Correct. And that goes to the person who has made the referral, and we do keep a record in our system. And we take that record to our managers.
Fine. And is this service funded?
So no, of course not. This was something that was, that happened out of a shoestring on a light bulb COVID moment.
Yeah.
And now we're working on that backwards to say we are providing a service because the referral has been generated. Okay, so it should be sort of processed in the same way as a normal face-to-face review. So we are taking that back, to get that funding retrospectively.
Yeah, and absolutely. It's a fantastic piece of work because I know it's a smaller number of patients in terms of that, but actually for those individual patients, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Helena, you've gone from that mean time of waiting for their resolution from sort of 4 to upwards to 7 months to 5 working days on average, which actually
less,
it's incredible.
Well, the feedback comes from the doctors themselves, from the rheumatologists who say, no, this is fab. Because, in the olden times, we were not that old. 2 years ago, you would have been grabbing the phone, getting your secretary to talk to somebody. Madness. And you see, I don't know how, because I know, Hasan, that you in particular has always been, you've always been very active, with virtual things. We were dinosaurs. I did not know what Teams was until March 2020. And I do remember having to conduct this very large meeting, say, for trial steering committees as part of clinical trials. And we had the spider in the center of the table. You remember those days in which people would call in and everybody was listening to this awful sound. You look back and you said, how did we survive? This is all good. We are making a huge difference with the minimum amount of effort. We are not only improving patient care, but we're making your life and our life easier. I'd rather have a quick discussion via Teams, have a look at your scans, have a look at your x-rays, tell you what I think, and then you go out and you're going to be able to sort it out yourself. And what is negative about this or what doesn't work, this is the future and it is here to stay. And one thing to say is I cannot give you now the numbers that we have. It will be around 15 or so in the last few months, patients that we've had referred. We've not needed to see a single one of those patients.
Yeah, I think
just with a description of the psoriasis or a PASI or a BSA, we're able to say this is what we need to do.
But this is such a simple thing. I just think I'm just fascinated. To be fair, this is the first time I'm hearing of it, and I think it's just so fascinating that this can be copied and pasted regionally, and then even at a national level, you can have lots of people coming in together and having even complex patients. And it's something like you've just, as you say, just one, within a week, you've just sorted this out, which I'm amazed with. And what the issue that we always have, as you know, is about how is this all going to be funded and so forth. And I'm sure you're going to find, ways about doing that. But has this been sustainable? That's the main thing, because obviously we talk about it in COVID, we've got a bit more flexibility and time, but obviously with all your old clinical workload coming back and in fact increasing, I'm sure, post-COVID, is it still feasible, doable?
So first of all, Hasan, I don't think we're doing anything unique here. I think, people are too busy to say what they're doing. That's what I believe. But we will be amazed to see how people have changed the practice as a result of COVID. So, for instance, I know that our CTD clinic colleagues in Leeds, we are now having a CTD meeting in which things have improved so much, because before it was about who can come to this meeting, shall we start the war on later so we can discuss the patients earlier? Forget it. We are now reactive, we are proactive, and we are taking every problem and sorting it out in a record amount of time. And this is the beauty of this type of working, that is completely sustainable. And you know why? Because it is making all our lives easier. We just can think so much clearer. For the AXPA meeting, we do this on a Friday. Fridays in Leeds are SPA day. Everything happens on a Friday. And we have the clinic in the morning, and straight after the clinic, we have the meeting. Sometimes if we overrun the clinic, we still have the meeting, because I take the little laptop onto the clinic room, we get all of us together around it, we all have a discussion sometimes with the registrar, we sort out the tertiary referral, and then we finish our clinic. Isn't it amazing? We would never ever have thought about this before. People would have said, but hang on, we have to do lunch first, or I need to go to a different hospital because we commute between sites. There would have been a lot of things, contributing to this. And now it's just about making it happen. And, whenever we talk to people in other trusts and they say, God, this is such a good service. And I just keep thinking, why didn't we think about this before? I certainly didn't think about it. No. And it's because we didn't have this virtual capability.
I think also, Helena, to be fair to you guys, that bit when you said at the beginning about you were hoping for a fairy godmother to come in and help you, you guys have the answers yourselves. And I think part of the process we've been through on the quality improvement journey is about trying to work out how we can give you some tools and give you some headspace. And that's almost what COVID gave as well, that space, wasn't it, to breathe and to think, and then to go, actually, we don't necessarily understand all the data that we've got in front of us. So how are we going to get clear on that? And then once we're clear on our data, how do we want to solve that? And that breaking down and understanding the problem means that you guys have the answers really quickly, because you know how best to serve your patients and your communities already.
So I think you're right, Lucia. We have discussed this before. I mean, I always say, I'm only a doctor. There's only so much I know. There's only so much I can do. But you are right. If you are at the front line, if you are at the ground, you know what needs to happen. And sometimes you cannot make it work, but there should be the capability and the possibility of you discussing things and somebody else helping you to make these things, work. I mean, as an example, for instance, when, again, on the first week of the lockdown in March 2020, when COVID kicked in for the first time, we got together and very quickly thought how we're going to communicate with our patients. Now, the Leeds Rheumatology Service provides around 40,000 outpatient appointments per year. It's a massive outpatient service. And we were complete dinosaurs. I mean, we never thought about how we're going to send a message out. I mean, I went to speak to my manager on day one, to the general manager, God forbid. These people that you never ever see, right? And I said, we need to send a text out. And I was like, what do you mean, a text? And I say, whatever numbers we have, we need to communicate with these people. And we developed this video, which one of us recorded, right? And then we texted all these thousands of patients and said, log onto this place, watch this video, we're telling you what to do. Can you believe it? That video was copied by Indian doctors in India, working in India, all sorts of countries, different parts of the UK. We never went any further with it. We didn't tell anybody this is what we've done. We did it out of need. And I think the message is that you can make it happen. If you have a problem, you need to, even if it's a big problem, just talk to your friends, talk out. I mean, look, know your stakeholders. Ask for the help, and eventually you will be able to deliver that little bit of change. And yes, I would love to have an innovation team telling me what to do, because I can tell you, I think it was Alice in Wonderland who always had about 7 impossible ideas before breakfast. Some days I feel like that, but I go back home with my problems and my ideas because I haven't got the strength, or I don't know how to go about it. But something like Aspiring to Excellence has done is given us, as you say, this space to think and to talk to like-minded people. And oh my, it's so good to know you are not alone. And we all have the same problems. And I used to look at other trusts and think, oh, they've got this and they've got that. Now, I don't mind. I just look at my own patch and I say, well, this is our problem. Let's see whether we can make it better. Because at the end of the day, it's our making everybody's life better.
Really top tips in there around the, actually, you might have the power to solve it yourself. You just might need a bit of space to do that. try and break down those problems, understand your data, and know that you're not alone, and maybe try and reach out. And you can find out loads more about some of the work that's going on through the Aspiring to Excellence programme, and the work specifically that Helena and the team in Leeds have been doing by checking out driving improvements in axial spar care, building strong foundations through Aspiring to Excellence, which is the first learning report to be published by the Aspiring to Excellence programme from NAS. You can get that on www.nas.co.uk/room for improvement. And I think the other thing is to reach out. I think all the Aspiring to Excellence programme teams are really keen to have conversations and to share connections with others. And I think you both described that today really nicely. So I think that's it from us, Hasan. Just a massive thank you to Helena, as always, for being fabulous and inspirational, and filling us all with the enthusiasm that we can do whatever we want to do in a given day.
Thank you, Lucy. It's enthusiasm out of need. I think the main message is we all have the same problems or very similar problems, and the solution and the answer is always there right in front of us. Is whether we can actually look at it and understand it. And if you think about something like the MDT, a lot of people are working this way in the UK. If you were to be referred to see a specialist in Aberdeen and you live in Devon, you probably would appreciate not to have to do the trip. Yes, randomly giving the places names here. But I'm sure that everybody appreciates the fact that your problem as a patient is taken very seriously, and that your doctors are always going to strive to give you the best answer and in as much a timely manner as possible.
Thank you, great. Thank you so much, Helena, for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. It was a great time spent just telling us about your service. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is a CPD accredited episode. To collect your certificate, please email aspiringtoexcellence@nas.co.uk and quote the code Helena. Room for Improvement is brought to you by the Aspiring to Excellence programme from NAS, which is sponsored by AbbVie, Biogen, Lilly, Novartis and UCB, and in partnership with BritSpa and the NHS Transformation Unit.